Welcome back to another episode of the Grunge Bible Podcast. This is the 118th edition, episode 118. My name is Chris Salona, and I'm sitting here with the lovely and talented Ethan Shalloway. Ethan, what's new around those parts? How are we doing?
Chris, man, I'm doing good. If you're watching on YouTube, we got a little bit different setup going.
New shit has come to light.
A little more ambiance. Yeah, new shit has come to light. So I'm doing good. I got a new microphone, Chris. We've been bitching about it for a long time. Well, the fans knew about this because when I was in LA about a month ago, Drew surprised. Well, he didn't surprise me. We needed another microphone if you wanted to be on, so we went and bought one, and then he's let me take it home. But that required me to buy a new laptop in order to use the interface. So I bucked up and I went and bought a laptop yesterday, took the hit, and now all of a sudden we're inspired. I got some nice lighting, got the microphone set up. Took me a little troubleshooting to make sure that everything was working, but I'm excited to see this one come to light. So I'm pumped up. I'm in a really good spot, Chris. I'm doing good. How about you?
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty jacked up to be doing this podcast right now. You said it yourself. The last couple of days or so, we're really trying to commit behind the scenes to make some decisions and get some things done that will make the show better. We figure we've been doing it 2.5 years. It's about time that we make some of those movements. So as they say, there are some big things going on behind the scenes right now. Major announcement on the way and some big things coming soon. I'm gonna get my setup done pretty soon, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the moment and actually let the listeners in on a little on what happened. So basically, we have the Patreon that we're going to talk about soon that people obviously support each month, and they're probably like, why haven't they bought microphones with that stuff? But we've been paying our producer Drew. Well, Drew took it upon himself to invest in the podcast, and he was furloughed for 2 months, and we used that money, and he gave it back to us to buy microphones to make us do that. So shout out to our producer Drew McFadden.
Yeah, this is what Drew's all about.
I'm really sorry to him and everybody that took us so long. But that's our game, Chris.
Right.
That's the game we play. Yeah, that's the game we play.
That can is going to get kicked way down that road.
So if it wasn't for your endless support out there, and then Drew's ability to invest in us, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be moving. We're moving upward. It's moving up. Well, Chris is going to have a brand new spanking mic soon, probably over the weekend or something like that, and it's probably going to make mine look like a baby toys.
Yeah, we're going to try to get up into the big leagues, but this is kind of what we talk about around here, like everybody contributing. So Drew contributed 25% of his Grunge Bible salary from 2023 thus far to improvements for the podcast. That's a really big bottle of water. How many ounces is that thing? Is that 64 ounces?
This is a liter or a liter and a half. Yeah, it's 50. It's 1.5 quarts, so 1.5 liters.
Okay.
50 ounces if you want 50.7.
50 ounces. Amazing.
But if you're out there, you're probably listening, in liters is what you go by. So
exactly. That's what it's all about. I mean, Drew, the gauntlet was laid down, and Drew decided to take some action in the same way that we've had many people over the course of this podcast take action and support us directly. You mentioned it earlier. The Patreon is the best way to do it, and unfortunately, this is the week that the heater ends. We were on a little bit of a bender, a hot streak, if you will, of people joining the
Joe
Patreon.
DiMaggio type.
Yeah, but we had an O for this past week. We have no new members of the Patreon, which I'm a little sad about. But people are coming around in their own time. That's the thing. Everybody kind of moves at their own pace and they get to the destination. But we are very thankful for everybody that's chosen to support us on Patreon. These improvements and the sustainability of this podcast would not be possible without your direct support. We are sponsored entirely at this point by the people who choose to give us $2, $5, or $10 per month. And as we like to do, I would like to thank our top tier supporters who choose to give us $10 per month on Patreon to keep this podcast running. And they are behind what we're doing behind the scenes to make this show better for everybody. Very, very humbled the people choose to support us. So at this time, I would like to thank Eric Berry, Sherry Matthews, Epona, Keith White, Black Hole Sean, Alex Long, The Blue Owl, Brother Nature, Eddie Vedder Got Me Through My Second Divorce, Doug Endy, Corden Stewart, Kara Kay, Captain Hightop, Faith Bittner, Fresh Tendonitis, Granny Grunge, Fuck Soup, Chris LSMS, Jamie Lynn, Carlene Salona, Jade Mercado, Laura and Irene, Millie, Marianne, Nikki Six, Rachel Corning, Seattle 4 fanboy from New Jersey, and What the Fuck is Up Denny. So thank you one and all for your support. And I was thinking about this earlier. Ethan, there's a lot of people who listen to this show, and that's a really cool thing. So if you're listening right now, thanks for being here. There's a million other places you could be right now, but the fact that you're choosing to spend some time with us really means a lot, and we hope that you're continuing to get some enjoyment out of this show. It's a cool thing.
It is, and as we talked about, we just hit our 200,000th download the other day, which is really pretty significant, pretty cool.
That's
so
200,000 conscious choices that people have made to click on us and see what we're about. So here's to the next 200,000.
Here's to the next 200,000. Exactly right. Yeah, we're moving up and along. So, so this episode is going to be pretty, laissez-faire. We had a nice long episode with Eric Lederman last week talking about some Soundgarden shows that he went to in person and a Nirvana show back in the 90s. So if you are looking for a long-form episode and a guest, please go back and listen to that one. It's a great interview. Eric does an awesome job being excited to talk about music, so he makes our job easy. This episode is just going to be me and Chris talking a little bit more in depth about what music has taught us over the years and a few bands that we want to shout out, and just overall, like broad strokes, what music gets you thinking about and how it can, help you cope, help you make decisions, whatever it may be. And we're going to get into that a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think like this episode is kind of the explicitly stated version of the motivation and the driving force behind all of our episodes. Music and art are some of the greatest teachers that you have in this world, and it's kind of that the one class that you stay in your whole life. You graduate from school, you enter the real world, and you're learning the whole time, and music is right there to teach you, to encourage you, and to be there for you. So this is going to be a really good conversation just to kind of chat about a lot of those things. And I feel like anytime we talk with somebody like Eric, it gets me thinking on this level that we're about to discuss today. And that's the cool thing. And I think that's why we keep coming back to do the show. And hopefully that's why you keep coming back to listen to us do the show.
Absolutely. All right. Should we get right into it, Chris?
Yeah, let's get right into it. So we should talk a little bit about, we've been listening to music for our whole lives, obviously, as all of us here have been, and we've learned a great deal. So Ethan, let's talk about some artists that you've learned the most from, or that have kind of been the most impactful, because it sounds, in a way, it kind of sounds silly that, an artist who you've never met can shape your worldview and kind of like hone who you are as a person. But that's what goes on. That's what goes on when you find art of value. And that's certainly who I am as a person. I've been molded by my family, my friends, the lessons I've learned from them. But music has had a very, very active role, I think, in shaping, me into who I am, who I want to be, and what I believe in. And it's a really cool thing because, as I said, that education and those lessons, you can learn them every day. Every time, you drop the needle on a record, you learn something.
Right. And I think where I want to start is kind of taking, and I've talked about this before, we've talked about it with certain bands, but music, what it's done for me is made me appreciate the in-betweens, right? We talk about it a lot. I think Brian Sella of the Front Bottoms and Isaac Brock of Modest Mouse do an incredible job. Obviously, we talk about PD a lot, like Built to Spill type stuff, maybe like Jay Mascis. But Modest Mouse, we'll bring up specifically, and we need to do a full episode on them. But when I listen to them over the years, I feel like it's allowed me to figure out a way to endure the in-betweens of life, because not everything in life is a big event, right? And time's always changing. And honestly, most of your life is the mundane. Most of your life is the stuff that is, you're grinding out work. You're preparing food for yourself. There's times where you're by yourself, 80% of the time, basically. So, these songs, and like Midwest emo is a great example. Like they talk about the small stuff and they talk about the mundane, and like how to either turn that into a song, turn that into emotion, turn that into a lesson. And that is really valuable because, like I said, life is all about the small things, all about the small interactions, the in between, and like I said, the mundane. So I think music is an awesome opportunity to kind of look at that, and even stuff that you think is important, but it's not. Like we talk about "The Good Times Are Killing Me" by Modest Mouse, and he talks about, staying up late, drinking warm whiskey, like drugs, this and that, and then just being like, what, when the next morning you're just like, well, I guess the good times are killing me. It was a great time, but you suffer from it. But it's like, it's also a small bit. So I'm assuming you probably have a similar thoughts on this as I do.
Yeah. I'll say I discovered a lot of the music of Modest Mouse and certainly Petey and a lot of the bands and artists that you just mentioned. I think at the perfect time for me, much in the way that I think I started doing this podcast with you at kind of the perfect time. A lot of those artists that you just mentioned, you're talking about the in-betweens, and us being in our mid to late 20s, we're getting up there a little bit into the late 20s here. I'll be turning 27 in September, and you'll be 29. When you graduate college and when you grow up and you start working, you kind of lose the regimented lifestyle a little bit, in the sense when you're in school, like there's always that next thing that's like a week away or 2 weeks away, and like everything is so close together, and it's like one thing after another, and they're big goals, they're tangible things that you can get your arms around, you can feel. And when you graduate and when you start working, you might, you move into an apartment or whatever, you're living on your own, maybe for the first time out of college. Those tangible things that exist, they're a lot further out, and as you said, there's a lot more time in between those things, and you have a choice to make. You can just kind of focus on like that next thing that's 9 months away, like the big thing that you're looking forward to or you're building towards. But I think you miss out on a lot. You miss out on a lot of development and a lot of experiences, and especially Ethan, Modest Mouse. I mean, you got me into them right around the time that we started this podcast. And in 2021 was the year that we started the podcast, and the year that I, my first full year, back in Rhode Island, back from college and my activities after college. And I was really kind of starting to settle in a little bit and kind of decide like what I want my life to look like, because time moves quickly, and, you settle in. Like I moved into my apartment and kind of got set up that way. And it was the perfect music for that time. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. And what you just said is exactly what I wrote. I grouped Modest Mouse, Isaac Brock, and Petey together, and just kind of like the lessons that you learn navigating life for the first time as at least what feels to me as a full-fledged adult, where I'm out of school and I'm working and I'm setting up those long-term goals. But in the middle, you're trying to learn, you're trying to grow, and you're trying to have experiences and really solidify who you are and who you want to be for the people in your life. And I think there's a lot of emotions that come into play, when you're trying to get those things sorted out. And it's a little bit of a roller coaster, as I'm sure everybody can relate to. You have those moments when you're up, those moments when you're down, and those moments where you really don't know how you are, and you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to get those answers. And, those first Modest Mouse records, This Is a Long Drive for Someone with Nothing to Think About, The Lonesome Crowded West, Building Nothing Out of Something, and The Moon in Antarctica. That year, I leaned very heavily on Isaac Brock's words, and it was perfect.
Good
for
news
that time.
For people that love bad news.
Exactly, and it's just real music, I think, for real common human experiences. And it's funny, everybody has a different way of songwriting and writing lyrics. A lot of them are kind of abstract, where you can apply them to kind of whatever you want. But I think, with Isaac Brock and with Petey, like those guys, like it's a lot more explicit in the sense that it's about, specifics and day-to-day things that you encounter and the real things that happen to real people. And
it's micro.
Kind of, exactly. And kind of it's very encouraging, and it's comforting to hear people give voice almost to those specific thoughts that you have, in a song like Lean Into Life by Petey, where it's like you get all this free time and no fucking idea what to do with it. You kind of got to get out there a little bit. And I think those songs were really, really comforting and encouraging that, hey, like, just because things aren't happening all the time, big things aren't happening all the time. Like there's a lot to be had, and you really have the agency to go out and make experiences for yourself. And I think it's okay to feel like you don't have that ability at times. And it's encouraging to hear, people talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I'm looking at the lyrics for, the good times are killing me. It's like, got dirt, got air, got water, and I know you can carry on. Shrug off short-sighted false excitement. Oh, what can I say? Have one, have 20 more, one more's. Oh, how it does not relent. And yeah, I mean, it's all it's like sometimes. Yeah, you have the everything of life at your fingertips, but you get caught in the one mores, and you get caught in the cycles of stuff, and that's a part of life too. And breaking out or, using it as something else is, as inspiration is the best way to do it, best way to go around it. And, yeah, man, I love his music. I love all the music that we're going to talk about today, but that was one of the ones I kind of wanted to start out with and think about. And I'm sure there's a lot more we could say about it, about what what it's taught us, what those bands have taught us. But that's like broad stroke. I feel like that's what those bands do for me most of the time.
Mm-hmm. And I think another thought that I had kind of about that point in your life where you discover music that makes you feel that way, when you start working and you settle in a little bit to your day-to-day life, I think that is when like the pull of conformity is the strongest in your life, I think, because college and high school are these big things where it's like you get to decide who you want to be and you can make decisions for yourself for really the first time. And then when you kind of settle in a little bit, there's a very, very defined, I think, objectivity to what we are taught is success and what we are taught is progression. And the song Modest Mouse's Custom Concern, they got that part where it's like, gotta go to work, gotta have a job, goes through the parking lot, fields, don't see no signs that they would yield, and then thought, this'll never end, this'll never stop. And that, I remember hearing that the first time, like when I started having those feelings, like, okay, like my job isn't new anymore, my apartment isn't new anymore, like my daily routine is the same, which is, it's helpful because I think it helps me be efficient, but you kind of feel like you're missing out on some things and you don't have these grand things going on. But it's one of those things, you still have that ability to create your own path and your own ideals, I think, even if you feel kind of like you're being pulled towards that conformity a little bit. So a lot of this music was really, really powerful for me with like, hey, like, you're not settling here. You're not giving up. You're not waving the white flag. You can still get out there and have great experiences and live interestingly, even though, your day-to-day actions might be similar, Monday through Friday.
Yeah. And it's motivational to like listen to that and to know that when you're doing the routine and you're doing the hard stuff, like that makes the other excitement all that more purposeful, and that always gets me through like the work day and gets me through the hard times. It's like, you're putting in the work to better yourself and to be down the road. It's going to, this year will pass, these 6 months will pass, this shift will pass, and you get to do what you want. And, it's about that balance, that balance.
Yeah, kind of in the same breath, and a lot of these artists in the area that I'm about to discuss, I don't think we're going to get very, very deeply into because we talk about them all the time, and that would be the artists of grunge. But for me, with Pearl Jam and Eddie Vedder, like their music and Ed's words to me are just a reminder, and just kind of the ethos that they bring, especially in their earlier stuff and when you see them live, like it's so encouraging to me. And I think the biggest thing that I learned from Eddie Vedder is that like, it is possible to do great things and to do big things. And, like the mundane aspects of life and the day-to-day, they can wear you down, like death from 1,000 paper cuts type thing. And, you listen to Eddie Vedder singing and the words that he wrote. It's such an uplifting feeling because it just reminds me all the time. And that's the feeling that drew me to that band in the first place, Pearl Jam, is that, great things are possible and you can make you can make your mark and you can have an impact. You know, you're not any less qualified to do that than anybody else. So, you know, I still find myself, you know, when I might be feeling the opposite of that, you know, I tend to get back to a little bit of Pearl Jam, and, you know, I might watch some live video of them live, and it's kind of a validation that you're like, hey, like I still have that great thing in me. And there's a lot of musicians that kind of give you that feeling, like, you know, almost like you listen to them or you go to a show and you watch this happen, and like you kind of get that, like, that lump in the top part of your throat where it's like you've got all this emotion that's ready to come out, and it's like, hey, like I have a lot inside of me that I can contribute, and it's kind of that encouragement to not be afraid to do that. And for me, that I think that's the biggest gift that Eddie Vedder's music has given me.
Yeah, I wrote down Pearl Jam and the Foo Fighters as like they're like the macro view on all of this. You know, if emo and what we talked about, that alternative side is like the micro, then this is like the macro. It's like the inspiring, and it's the, you know, it gets you through the big life events where it's like it's so much to put into words. And you know, the Foo, they have, you know, My Hero and Times Like These, and, you know, the lyrics in those are just, I mean, the songs in general are just really big, and they make you feel that, like, that you're above everything, and it's like, you know, time stands still. And like, yeah, and you know, in times like these, like, I'm a new day rising, I'm a brand new sky, and I just love that. You know, I love how, like you said, it's motivational in the sense that you can do anything you want and have your heroes, have your people that you look up to. And, you know, we talk about Release a lot. Release is a huge song, and it's like letting big events and big traumas like pass, and to move on and be able to move on to the next thing and to not be held back. And music helps with all of that, right? These are the reasons we turn to it a lot of the times.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny, I feel like I always have this tendency to kind of break down a lot of these words and these artists into kind of two different camps, where it's like, you know, they've impacted me and they've taught me a lot about myself internally, versus they've, you know, taught me a lot of lessons in terms of how I live my life externally. And I think like the Modest Mouses, the Pearl Jams, even Counting Crows, Adam Duritz, it's a lot of like internal thought and kind of getting that sorted out and finding your footing in the world. But two artists that I want to talk about briefly that have really taught me so much when it comes to you know, how I live my life and how I treat other people, particularly family, and kind of going through that and dealing with the issues that might arise. Bruce Springsteen, and then Dan Soupy Campbell from the Wonder Years. I think they're chips off the same block in the sense that they wrote so much about their family and being there for their family and protecting their children and maybe dealing with difficult relationships that they were born into. And Bruce Springsteen for me is like, I mean, he's taught me more, I think, than any other artist that's ever, you know, that I've ever had the opportunity to listen to. And, you know, Bruce, he talks so much about, you know, healing from family issues, and, you know, he had a really complicated relationship with his father, which is something that I can certainly relate to. And just, you know, his words in song, and then his words in everything else that he's done, you know, his book that he wrote. Once again, I discovered a lot of those things at the perfect time, and it gave me the encouragement to kind of, you know, let old ghosts kind of pass away and write a new end, and feel empowered enough to do that, to let things go and to forgive and to just, you know, chart a new path for yourself. And I think Dan Campbell from the Wonder Years does that so much. And it's interesting with him because a lot of his earlier stuff was writing about how, you know, he wasn't equipped to handle the things that were coming in his life, you know, marriage, family, kids, you know, how do I raise these children when I have so much going on in my own head? And, you know, from the last 12, 13 years that he's written, he's had a family, you know, his kids are growing up, and he writes about that kind of stuff. So it's such an amazing thing to be welcomed into somebody else's head who's dealing with some things that you're dealing with, and dealing with things that you are going to deal with at some point. And it's just really encouraging, you know, just kind of, it's like that hand on the shoulder that, hey, like, a lot of these problems you're going to figure out, and you're going to be fine, and you're going to have the ability to heal, and you're going to have the ability to be strong for the people you need to be strong for, even when it feels like you're not able to do that, given everything that's going on in your head. And it's just that kind of that mix of, objectivity with a little bit of magic in there, and they kind of really uplift you in that way. A lot of lessons to be learned from artists like that.
Yeah, that's perfect. I figured you'd bring up Bruce, talk about him, and
oh yeah,
I kind of go towards like U2 as well. Very, very inspirational. I spent a lot of time, like that's something that was passed down from my dad. He enjoyed listening to U2 a lot, and you could tell it had an impact on him. And I think that when I listened to that, you learn because you try to connect the dots of how it impacted somebody else. And I know we do that a lot too. And you go send me a song, like listen to this, and I kind of listen like, what did he get out of it? And then you can kind of use that to kind of guide you and through the song and through the lyrics. So yeah, very, very good points.
100%. I love the fact that you just brought up U2, because that's a band that I always go through these phases where like I will listen to nonstop U2 for like a week and a half, and I'll get what I need from it, and then I'll kind of forget about U2. And then when I'm dealing with a lot of those emotions, I always find my way back to Bono, and he's written some really, really incredible things. Also in that same vein, kind of about the family and about who you want to be, and in a way kind of that Pearl Jammy, like you can do great things. You think about like Where the Streets Have No Name, but one song that I absolutely adore from U2 is a song called Kite, which he wrote in the aftermath of the death of his father, and he was kind of writing about how his father passed away, and a lot of the emotions he felt towards his father, he's a little worried that, with his own children, they're going to feel those emotions towards him. And just kind of coming to terms with the fact that, when you love somebody and you nurture somebody and you're there for somebody, there might come a day where they don't need you to be that person anymore, and it's okay. And the chorus in that song, it's, I want you to know that you don't need me anymore. I want you to know you don't need anyone or anything at all. But I know that this is not goodbye. And it's just kind of like the changing of the seasons. And that song is really, really powerful. And there were a few performances that he gave in the direct aftermath of the passing of his father, where, he's so emotional, his voice is breaking at different points in the song. And it's just that vulnerability, I think is in a way more encouraging and more powerful than even the songwriters might know at the time. And it certainly was for me, and it continues to be for me.
Yeah, and what we talk about a lot is the ability for artists to be so vulnerable. Like you said, I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they wear their hearts on their sleeves. And I think you basically that's what we're talking about. Like, the vulnerability of these people is what is therapy to us, and that's what helps sure with is. whether it's exciting news, exciting ballads, or if it's the opposite, dealing with struggles. And one thing that another thing like idea that I wrote about was like, artists' music that have passed away since we've been listening to them, and how that changes the way you listen and learn from them. And obviously we do it a lot in our genre. I wrote down Townes Van Zandt as well, because the artists that die, they're older, or as well, or like, Johnny Cash or something. And, they're dealing with, they're dealing with older age, but but you look at artists differently when they've passed away, and you look at their music, and I feel like you can learn a lot that way, and things resonate in a total different sense. And I find myself, that's anytime, it's weird. Anytime someone's passes, you go back and you listen, and then you're just like, oh geez, like here we go, classes in session type stuff.
Yeah, and I think as it relates to our genre, I think the biggest one for us was when Chris Cornell passed away. I think that the entire perception of his words changed overnight, literally, from when he was alive to when he was no longer with us, and it kind of makes you think about a lot of things. But that theme of vulnerability, I think, is most present, and it's present in all of these artists and anybody that you listen to. And I think particularly for us as like men growing up in Western society, I think vulnerability is a really good thing to practice, and it's a really good thing to be comfortable doing, because I think that's the most direct way, I think, to be supportive of other people. It's the most direct way that you can be supportive of yourself, because vulnerability, I think, is honesty. And, you know, if you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest with other people. And if you're not honest with other people, you know, you're not going to have those relationships that get to the fullest potential of what they could be. And that's something that's really, really important. And I think I underestimated as I was growing up, you know, the degree to which I would need to be vulnerable about certain things. And you know, it's to hear all of these artists be completely transparent with, you know, what's going on in their own heads, and put it down in a way that we are able to listen to it. It's so encouraging, and it's so validating, I think, and it's a great method of practice, I think, to become vulnerable, because these people that we idolize, you know, for different ways, whether they were skilled musicians, great guitarists, whatever, great lyricists, something else that I admire in all of them is their ability to be vulnerable. And that's something that I think I've intentionally tried to practice as I've gotten older, because it can be hard. And I think the older you get, the more complex the problems are that you face. And
yeah, more time has passed, you know?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more baggage, you know, as the years go on. And the more baggage you carry, the more tough situations you end up with. Chances are, you know, the more shit that you have on you, and the more stuff you have to deal with, and the emotions are more complex. And just to kind of take that time to give those emotions their due, and to process them, and to work on the negative things within yourself, can really, I think, you know, bring you to new heights, and make you just a better person. And I think that's what all this is about. It's about becoming a better person, you know, for yourself and for everybody around you. I think that's like the one common theme that exists in all of these artists and in all of their words, and why I admire them so much and value what they were able to do.
Yeah, when we talked about Chris, and I want to bring up, you know, Chester Bennington, because he was someone that I listened to a bunch, you know, growing up, but maybe didn't, because of my young age, or just the music, didn't like deep dive or like really take much notice. But then when he passed away, all of a sudden you consume it differently, and obviously, you know, how he died, and like you try to like figure out, you know, put the clues together and whatnot. And I think that is always such a, you know, you want to at least kind of live on and think about their decisions and where, you know, how it impacted their lives, and then kind of work through it. So I think, you know, that's a good way to look at it, and to learn from, you know, all these people. Yeah, there's been a lot of them. And then one last thing you can learn, I think, we got to get into Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit. You know,
Absolutely. Sometimes
you don't want to get out of bed. Limp Bizkit, you know, the new battle, it just teaches you so much about how to rage and how to be, you know, really upset with society and people. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
It would be fun to try and break down the lyrics of Limp Bizkit and some of the
we totally could.
Korn.
It's all in the eye. It's all in the ear of the listener and the mind of the listener. I mean, that's the thing. I'm sure there's people out there that have listened to Break Stuff or something to that equivalent and gotten a lesson out of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a release. There's definitely a release of, like you said, just like emotional stuff, like anger and like all that stuff, where you listen to really heavy. You can listen to really heavy music, and it elicits that response.
Well, here I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to get something from that kind of music. I think you're just, a lot of times with big emotions, whether it be anger or sad, anything, you have the tendency, I think, to curb those emotions and to kind of downsize them a little bit and make them easier to handle. But when you do that, you're not dealing with the entirety of it. So a lot of time, I mean, these anger is a big emotion, and everybody feels it at times. And I think it's important to let yourself feel that way. And certainly in those songs, I think that's it's a great case study of that. And I think, you know, you can't shy away from any sort of emotion. You can't downsize anything artificially, because anytime you downsize something, you're not dealing with it on its whole level. And, you know, you downsize it, you deal with the downsized version of it. But like the other part that you chose to ignore, or you chose to kind of push away to the side, it's always going to be there. So you have to kind of take things, you know, at the size at which they're presented to you. And I think they certainly had a knack of doing that, all of those artists in that area. So I think that's a good lesson that you could kind of derive from the new metal angry scene.
Oh yeah, it's important. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Is there anything else that you have on your mind around these subjects?
There's one that's kind of at odds with a lot of what I just talked about, like doing big things and like creating these really, really grand things. And the lesson that I learned from this musician isn't even anything having to do with their lyrics, but just kind of the style with which they approached their music. And that's from the old blues artist Junior Kimbrough. And he said one of my favorite quotes about music that I've ever heard. And somebody was interviewing once, and they were talking to him about his songs, and he was like, "You see, all of my songs, they just have the one chord. If I find another chord, I save it for another song." And kind of that art of simplicity a little bit, and you can still do really, really awesome things with simple ingredients, and even simple efforts can be powerful, and they can be really, really important. And I listened to his music, and I'm like, holy shit, this sounds really good. You know, some of my favorite blues stuff. I think he was an incredible guitarist, blues guitarist. But objectively, it was really simple. It was just up and down the neck. I mean, it's 12-bar blues. It's one of the easier things that you can do. You know, you're just taking that chord position up and down the neck at different points. But you know, when you approach something the right way, even though it might be simplistic, it's really powerful. I mean, you could make the same case about any of the 3-chord and the truthers out there. You know, a lot of Nirvana's guitar work from Kurt Cobain is kind of poppy, but it's efficient, and there's simple ingredients that they're easy to kind of to replicate. But like, you know, they used that simplistic style as a vehicle, I think, for a lot of their emotions within them. So I think, you know, anytime you start thinking about these big things and I want to do this huge thing and create something really, really complex, I think it's important, you know, you got to be reminded sometimes that you don't have to do this humongous thing to get a really good result and to have a really positive impact. Sometimes it's something really simple. And I think that kind of has a parallel, Ethan, in a lot of what we do athletically. You know, when you want to get better at something, you know, it's like I could train for 4 hours on Monday, but I'm going to be cooked by Thursday. You know, so it's little efforts over a consistent period of time with simple ingredients. And when you're consistent with something like that, you can master those simplistic movements and those simplistic techniques, and you can end up creating something in the long run that's really, really, really profound and really special.
Yeah, that's great. The simple stuff goes a long way.
Yeah.
I agree with that. The last thing I'll say in general, overall, is, you know, music has taught me a lot about like cooperation. And you watch bands come together and produce a record, and it takes a whole year, you know, and then you got to deal with producers, and there's patience involved, and then there's, you know, high tension between the bands split up, come back together and finish the album. Like, you know, music is a collaborative effort, and when people get done and they go, this is a masterpiece, like this is my heart and soul, this is everything I put into it, and everybody in the band saying the same thing, they work together, and like sleepless nights, all that stuff. You know, it reminds me that like working in groups and with people and can be extremely rewarding, and you have this final product that you just want to show the world. So I think that's the collaborative side of music is a beautiful thing. It's difficult, but it's super rewarding. So I think that's always like what I enjoy. Like there's a group of 5 people that are in it together, you know what I mean? And they're making it work. They're doing their best to, you know, that's their team, that's their office. And yeah, I love that. I think that's really important to, you know, give praise to, because it's hard.
Yeah, and there's a lot of patience and trust that goes into something like that. And something that I personally really struggle with is just keeping my mouth shut and just listening. And music on a whole has hopefully made me better at just being quiet and listening to what other people have to say, and really, really listening, and like, not trying to do anything else at that time. And I think, these bands, that's how you get better. You listen to somebody else's ideas, you listen to their perspectives, and you can learn a lot. If you're not always trying to put something out, you can let something come to you. And certainly, I think in terms of creating music, that's a really, really huge part of it. And just having the trust that the people around you are going to be able to contribute, and that you're going to be able to get something out of that. That's a really, really good point. I like that one a lot.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Give you a lot to think about, a lot to go out and listen to, and challenge yourself and ask you, what has music taught you over the years, and what lessons have you learned? And get back to us, whether in the comments or messages, and we'll
absolutely
keep talking about it.
Those are the questions of the day. What has music taught you, and who in the music world has taught you the most?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So if you're still listening, thank you very much. Thank you for making it to the end. If you aren't listening, well, you don't hear this, so sad we lost you, but we'll do better next week. Chris, I believe I have some songs of the week that we need to take care of. Would you like to go first? Do you have one ready?
Yeah, I'll go first. So a few days ago, I was able to see the mighty Boy Genius live and in color. And I love and adore all of them. Phoebe, Lucy, and Julian, especially Julian. I'm obsessed with her. But it was really cool. It was just a really, really powerful show. I spent a lot of time with their music, individually and collectively as Boy Genius, around the same time that I moved back to Rhode Island, and I started working my adult job, and started trying to set my life up. And I learned a lot from them, and it was kind of a cool kind of culmination of that process to be able to see them all live. I had seen them all solo separately, at least once. I'd seen Julian twice, but to see them all on the stage together was really, really cool. And it was the first show, I think, since my last Pearl Jam show in 2018 with you, where, you walk into the pit and everybody knows every single word to every single song. And it was just, I was watching it, listening to the music, and then at points I would just stop listening to the music and the artists on stage and just listen to everyone around me. I'm like, this is really fucking cool, that someone was able to make something powerful enough that so many people identify with it and dig it, that they're just screaming at the top of their lungs. I thought that was really cool. So my song of the week is going to come from Boy Genius. I'm going to pick Me and My Dog, which was from their 2018 EP. Really, really good song. It's so good live, because in the studio version, kind of at the end, on the studio version, they kind of mute Phoebe's part where she just belts out "And I Dream About It," but live, she just leans into it and just lets it rip. And it was so cool, because she was letting it rip, and everybody else in the crowd was letting it rip, and it was just a really powerful moment. It's kind of one of those reasons in a nutshell, why we're drawn to music. It's fun to kind of release those big noises and those big emotions at times. So I was really, really stoked that I got to see them. I bought a shirt. I had to. I look forward to wearing that and wearing that out over the next months and years. Yeah.
It's like in Dead Poets Society when Robin Williams says to let out a yelp. And
exactly.
That's them standing on top of the desk, giving their best yelp.
That's what it's all
awesome.
about.
Yeah, I knew you loved that concert. Was looking forward to it. So I'm glad that it lived up to it.
It was really cool.
Awesome. So for my song of the week, I had sent my boss a song. I was like, "Hey man, I'm not coming into work. Sorry, but here's a song you should listen to." Basically, I was like, "Sorry, I can't work. I hope this makes up for it." He's like, "No problem. Here's one for you." And so it's a band called Dury. And they're pretty new. They only have a few singles out and some stuff. And the song is called "Who's Laughing Now," and it's pretty good. It's right in the vein of Petey and kind of Wonder Years type. So you're gonna like it when you listen to it for sure.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited.
And but it fits with kind of what we were talking about in the first little bit. And I'll just read the first verse. It says, "My mom always said I would regret it if I ever get a tattoo. She said I'd never get a job like I ever wanted one. With that attitude, my dad said I need to learn stick shift learned to drive a stick shift, but every van I have had has automatic. My friend said someday I would make it big, but I'm still living in my basement. I'm just as broke as the day I was born, but I still make it work just like everybody else. It's all just a cruel joke, and everybody knows there's no way out. Well, who's laughing now? And it's like a big song, fun, and you're gonna like it. Dirty. Who's laughing now?
I fucking love that. Like you reading that, like I just got chills. Like that is that's the perfect song of the week for this episode that we just had.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely. Yeah, dude. It's good. Yeah. My friend said someday I would make it big, but I'm still living in the basement. I love that. Oh man, so that's a good one. So 2 great songs. Hope it's a good episode, and yeah, that's all I got, Chris.
So you said it's kind of like a Petey thing almost, like
it's kind of like a Petey, yeah.
And it's worth mentioning. Petey just announced a new single's coming out July 7th. It's called "I'll Wait," and if all goes well, hopefully we will have some more information on that in the coming weeks here on the podcast. But man, I can't wait! I can't wait to listen to that song. Your song.
I can't either. I'm pulling it up right after this too.
Yeah, me too. I'm really jacked up about that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for listening. Please consider becoming a Patreon supporter and shelling out some cash to help support all the stuff that we need to buy.
Yeah.
And if not, leave a review. And if not, just come back next week. And if not, well, this isn't for you.
Yeah. We'll be here. It's up to you if you will be.
Yeah, that's right. We will be here. Keep chugging them out. So
we're like the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week diner. Like we're the guys working the counter. Like we're always there, and like some of the regulars, they're always here. Some people drop in for a little bit, but you know, we don't hold grudges. You know, if you drop off a little bit, you know, you're always welcome back.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but you can always come back.
Yeah, man.
All right, Chris. That's all I got.
That's all I got.
Love you, everybody out there. Rock and roll.
Rock and roll, everyone. We'll see you next week, hopefully. Take care.
Peace.